You are listening to Brain Software, episode 118, emanating from the Hypnotic World Epicenter, Toronto, Canada. Today, we continue our discussion on powerful communication. This is part 2 of a multi-part mini-series. And if you're into hypnosis, NLP, or just being the best you possible, you're in the right place.
Hey dudes, what's happening, man? Just trying to get the tent set up here in the Dyatlov Pass, but it's getting really cold. There's stuff out there in the night, in the dark.
Yes, there is, Dave. It's the power of your unconscious mind. Or it's wolves. Or something far more sinister.
Yeah, enough said, Scro. I'm not sticking around, so send my $25 to the 15th dimension.
Will do, Dave. Catch you later.
Yes, Scro. Ejaculator. Kill Pazixum.
Welcome all and sundry, and especially welcome to our fellow riders of the Hypnotic Storm. It's a white day and a windy day here at the Dyatlov Pass, and we have an amazing news report that our loyal listeners will find to be astonishing, so stay tuned. But more importantly, whatever happened to that old tranquility we used to know? These are days of victory! And so in light of all that cool stuff, please join me now in welcoming to the eye of the storm, the hypnocidal maniac himself, a man who owns a piece of Admiral Nelson's ship, the HMS Victory, and who waits up all night for the lawn tree to bloom, Mike Mandel!
Yes, Chris! Listen, man, my voice is kind of shot today.
It is. It's weird.
And, I'm drinking some really nice coffee you made me. This might help. But let's get into it. This is going to be a good one.
We are going to have a good one. I want to say, right at the very beginning, we got 2 emails in the last week that just were
horrible,
very harsh complaints on us for 2 things. One was us talking over each other far too often.
Each other.
No, in all honesty,
predictable.
It's our style, but we realize that in a recording like this, we have to do a bit better of a job trying to avoid talking over each other. But I said try, which really implies that we won't
fail.
Succeed. So we'll do our best to that request. And the second one was, I love your podcast, but you guys seem to have really ramped up how much time you waste talking about your classes and all the promotional stuff that you're doing. And to that, we said, well, since we don't actually have any paid advertising on this podcast, you'll just have to put up with a minute or 2 of us talking about what we're doing. But anyway, this is going to be an amazing episode.
Yeah, man.
We have some really good stuff. We're going to dive very quickly into a question from an audience participant who sent us in a fairly detailed and complex question, which we're going to unpack all kinds of trauma, anxiety, lack of momentum in life, all that stuff. And then we're going to get on to part 2 of our mini-series on communication. So the only thing that we want to tell you before we do that, as far as promotional stuff of our own kind goes, is check out MikeMandelHypnosis.com/events, because what's coming up, we have Wizard School for those of you who are trained hypnotists in Toronto. It's in April, that's right. We have the sold-out May class, which you don't need to worry about since it's sold out. We have the Jacquins coming to Toronto May 11th and 12th. And we have more Architecture of Hypnosis and attendance at HT Live, Hypnothoughts Live in Las Vegas. We encourage you to check that out. That's where you can hang out with us and a bunch of other amazing hypnotists for a full weekend.
In the alligator bar.
Yeah, so that's all I'm going to say. Hopefully that was a tighter pitch. All right, let's move on. We've got a word of the day here, Mike.
Yes, and as usual, Christopher, I took the think tank that is in my office, spun the cylinder randomly, and the word that leapt to the fore was facade.
Facade.
It's not. It doesn't rhyme with grenade. Right?
Do you know,
facade.
I'm going to admit right now that while I know the word, I didn't actually know how to spell it. I'm looking at it here on the screen, going,
thinking it's facade.
Yeah, but I realized it was actually facade. And I thought that's a word I've never actually spelled in my life.
Yeah. Well, think tank has. Well, what comes to mind with you when you think of
well,
facade?
In light of what I just said, here's what comes to mind. Sometimes you hear something and you think you probably know what it means, and you pretend.
Oh.
And you know what might be better? Go frickin' look it up.
Oh, Bavard.
Go learn. Go be sure. So, and I do that when I'm writing. If I want to write a word that's, let's say, a figure of speech, and I'm not really sure what's the right way to spell it or say it or whatever it is, I'll just Google it, and I'll find out from some article. Maybe it's Grammar Girl or whatever other, grammar tips types of websites, and I'll learn the correct way.
Well, I'm wondering, let's get the actual definition of facade here, because I think that might be a good idea, so we can apply it to the podcast.
You could put up a facade that you know what you're talking about, or you could actually just know.
Yes, there we are. I'm going
That's
to
what it
spell
made me
it
think
here.
of.
Facade.
All right, and he's on his iPad, ladies and gentlemen.
It's actually got accent circonflexe as
does.
well. No, it's got a cedille. It's at the front of a building, any face of a building given special architectural treatment, such as a museum's east facade or a false, superficial, artificial appearance or effect.
Which is why it is, in a sense, a metaphor. The word facade is a metaphor for artificial fake, right? That's
I guess so. Now, here's what comes to mind for me. When you go somewhere like Disney World, you know how they have like a medieval area or Busch Gardens or whatever. The buildings will have a facade. They'll have a front that looks like it's, Mouseketeer Land or something, but it's an actual normal building, but they put this complex, beautiful, interesting looking facade on the front so that it looks more appealing to the eye.
So what does that mean to you?
It means that maybe we should completely revamp everything we're doing and put like mice on it. I don't know, man.
That's just crazy. Okay.
I don't know.
No more of that crazy talk, Mike.
Okay, Chris.
We will not have any mice in this episode. Only gerbils.
Well, I guess that's been our facade. You mean
or guinea pigs.
All right, that was a good one.
Okay, let's move on.
I think that failed dismally. Chris, was that your greatest failure of all time?
That's our latest intervention, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really great. When someone does something stupid and they're down on themselves about it, you say, I got a question. Would you consider what just happened to be your greatest failure? What a great double bind that is. They're going to say, no, I failed way worse than that, and then access those states. So they're going to say, yeah, that was my greatest failure. Brilliant. Okay.
It's really quite funny for us. Okay, we are going to be unpacking this really great question.
Go for it.
From a lady we're going to call Roxanne. That's not her real name. We've changed your name for you. Before we do that, let me just make sure I also let you know that right after this, we're going to go on to communication content. We've got some great stuff, power language, some framing, some NLP, matching and mirroring type stuff. Lots of good stuff coming up beyond this. But before we do, this is a very long email, so we're not going to read it. We're going to summarize it. Mike, do you want to give it your best shot and summarize the main points?
Yeah, this is a young woman. I'm presuming she's young. It's very complex.
25, I believe.
Yeah, she's got PTSD. She's got anxiety. Her everyday life is messed up because of that. She has trouble speaking to people, especially men, and she's pretty sure this is tied to past trauma. She also had a severe car accident where the brakes failed. She got a bad head injury. And that was 6 months ago, but she's still in constant pain. She lost her place to live. She even lost her dog. And the woman has gone through financial problems, all kinds of things. And she's just struggling to get through life when she's filled with anxiety and consistent pain. And she said, but when it comes down to it, even the pain is all in my head. Knowing this doesn't change it. She knows what foods are healthy. She knows what foods are literally killing her. And she's sunk really, really low. Her life is, kicked her pretty hard, and she's attempting to get herself off her butt, as she puts it. But she says, here's the interesting thing to me, Chris, and we said this just before we went on the air. She said, even though I have motivation, I can't make myself get off my butt. Here's one of the things I think she needs to do, and we're going to give you more than this, but I think she really needs to recognize that even writing this email is a step in the right direction. It is getting off her butt, making the effort to do even this. We have to support small positive changes.
Exactly.
Think of it as, a tiny flame that you're starting in a campfire, and you nurture it and you feed it with tiny bits of kindling first until it grows and grows and becomes a roaring blaze. You have to celebrate small victories. Mm-hmm. So my question is, what can you still do? Never mind your limitations. What are you able to still do to make transformation possible and happen in your life, Chris?
Yeah, I totally agree. This is all about the idea of eating the elephant one bite at a time and taking baby steps. And we're going to get into, in this mini-series, we said, I think on the last podcast episode as well, we will be talking about Michael Pantalon's book, Instant Influence. Yeah. I think we're going to be talking about the autonomy principle from that book in this podcast episode as well. But he points out when people are hesitant to make change, if you're influencing someone else, or in this case, influencing yourself, So it might just be something as simple as, let's say you need to go to a doctor and get checked out for some condition, and you just can't seem to get off your butt to call and make that appointment. Well, perhaps you could look up the doctor's phone number, put it on a Post-it note by your telephone. That's an easy step. And then you know what? You've now paved the way. You've created some momentum. And the next thing you know, you're sitting at your desk with your phone, making the phone call, booking the appointment. That's how change happens. You just take one step at a time. This happened to me, like Mike, just before we started recording this podcast.
Right.
I was talking to you about some technical stuff that I wanted to overcome with our website and how we are dealing with customers and new leads that come in. And without getting into the details, I was looking for a solution and I just didn't feel motivated to go and spend all of the time researching it all, everything that I needed to do. But I did make a post in a group on Facebook where I had some resources, and I just mentioned that I was looking for this solution and I didn't really know where to find it. Guess what happened? Within a couple of hours, somebody had answered me, gave me a great idea of what I could use, and all of a sudden, my motivation skyrocketed.
Well, okay, so what triggered the actual motivation shift from that? What was it?
Because the reply that came back was just so blindingly obvious, like, oh, this will require a little bit of work, but I know exactly what needs to be done now, and it doesn't feel as much of a mystery to me, so I'm going to go out and implement this. And I couldn't wait to wake up in the morning and implement this, which I did yesterday, as of this recording date. And it's wonderful. And now I feel great. The thing is done. The job is done. And it was something that I was just not interested in doing for months.
Now, that makes a lot of sense. I'm thinking in this young woman's case, there's so much trauma and that in her background. And you know the Mandel model of therapy says de-traumatize first.
Yes,
she's going to have to get rid of those layers. But what we're going to do to help her out here, help her make those positive steps and build momentum. So in a year, she's writing to us again and telling us how brilliantly her life has changed, not because of anything we've done, but because she's applied it.
It's all stuff she's going to do. And
we're
she's going to take baby steps.
We're sending her a bunch of stuff.
Yes.
We got her email address.
Yeah, we were actually just talking about this. So Roxanne, who the name we're calling you might not. Hopefully you're listening and you know we're talking about you. We're going to send you, the first thing we thought of is the Navigator system. This is Mike's protocol. You came up with this many, many years ago.
Yep.
It's a metaphor for a navigator of a ship. The ship is your life in an ocean or in a body of water, and you need to make sure that that ship is being steered in the right direction so that you go where you want to go. If you don't know how to navigate your ship, the ship is just going to go wherever the current takes it, and that isn't necessarily a good thing, right? So this navigator is this unconscious process that you install, and then you control your navigator through compass statements, which are more of, less of statements.
You explain that really well.
Apposition of opposites is a principle we've talked about before, right? So when you say, well, I don't want to be so depressed, let's say you hear somebody say that, okay, well, what do you want to be instead of depressed? And so whatever that is, well, I want to be happier. That might be the first thing that comes to mind. So you say your compass statement with the navigator system is less dissatisfaction, less depression, less whatever the word is to you, less X, more Y.
And the reason it works is because you install it. You install the navigator. So we're going to send her more than that.
We are sending you the navigator system. We're also going to give you a copy of the Peak Performance Audio.
Get her in some good states.
Now, that Peak Performance Audio program, it's 2 tracks. It used to be a tape, then it was a CD, now it's MP3s. And it's really awesome because track 1 teaches you peak performance techniques. So the same kind of stuff we've been talking about on this podcast, and I'm sure that in the archives, we actually did a series on peak performance. So it is in here. It is free. It is part of the podcast. You can look it up. But the Peak Performance Audio is great performance strategies that your conscious mind can learn, and a reinforcing hypnosis track, which is awesome.
Right.
And we're also giving you the stress relief recording. Similarly, it was a tape cassette, then became a CD, now is available as MP3 on the website. And I think you'll really enjoy that. It's the most popular self-hypnosis track.
We're going to be careful. This is going to start like we're doing a commercial.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to take this.
It's not a commercial.
Crinkly jacket off, which makes a lot of noise.
I know. Every time you move
I'm telegraphing first that I'm removing it. There we go, buddy.
Every time you would rotate your neck, I would hear the short shavings of hair on the back of your head crinkle against this plastic fabric.
All right. Hearing.
So that's
dealt with.
Yeah, that's dealt with. We really can't emphasize enough the importance of taking positive baby steps.
Continuous.
Know what you want. But let's get on with communication, because this is all in the theme of communicating with yourself and with others. So,
well, the first one we got here, Chris, is know your audience. And this is a really interesting thing. As a professional speaker, you know that I speak to a lot of different audiences. And there's a huge difference between speaking to a group of accountants and speaking to a group of sports enthusiasts or whatever, or actors. The audience response will have a group mind to it based on the dominant personalities in the room. That's why we laugh when other people laugh. We don't laugh if the people we respect aren't laughing. There's a group mind occurs. And anytime we're communicating with someone else, even one person can be an audience in our day-to-day lives, we have to know who they are, what they are, all about them. Otherwise, we risk miscommunication. If I went to speak to, Toronto Dominion Bank, TD Canada Trust, and was doing a lecture on brain software, with that sort of thing I do, and came out there and acted like it was the freaking Super Bowl,
they would think you're nuts.
Yes, and that actually happened to a friend of mine, as you know. A friend of mine, we'll call him Steve. He was an NLP trainer. He's very, very skilled. He went to speak to a group, and I've said this before, but it fits perfectly. He had not calibrated who he was talking to.
And in this case, it was a bunch of
accountants. It was a group
right?
of accountants and retiring bankers and that.
Right.
Yeah.
So very, suit and tie type of professional audience.
Yes, very straight-laced. He had just seen Tony Robbins speak in Toronto and wanted to model his life on him. By his own admission.
And Tony is an energetic guy.
Exactly.
We love Tony Robbins. He's
really
super
good
high
at
energy.
using NLP and bringing it to the business community and the personal development community. So this guy we're going to call Steve, they announced him. He comes running out on stage. He's got a podium there. And he does all his Tony Robbins, how's everybody doing?
Yeah.
Give me a great big hell yeah. Whatever, this kind of thing.
And
they're just stunned. They're all undergoing PGO spikes of shock and surprise and
Who is
trepidation.
this guy?
Yeah, they're just looking at him. But being an NLP trainer, he's adapting his behavior constantly and is able to calibrate. And, 15 seconds, 20 seconds into it, he realizes it's not going
working.
over. They're just staring at him. And he brilliantly stepped away from the podium to the side, pointed back at it like he was still there, and said to them, "Don't you hate speakers like that?"
So he was literally
standing.
He's standing in spot A. He steps
geographically
very clearly
separates
out
himself.
of the way. Let's call it now point B that he's in, and he
Yeah.
points back to A and says, "Don't you hate when people do that?"
Yeah, don't you hate speakers like that?
And that is a nice dissociation.
And that immediately put them back with him. He had the audience again, and then he did a very laid-back, quiet speech, heavy on data, and got a tremendous response. You have to know who you're speaking to. And the way you're going to have to wing it sometimes. You can't do research and development, do R&D on everybody who's coming across your path and find out, how am I going to develop a customized plan for this person? You can't do that.
It falls back into the prior lesson, I think, from podcast 117, which was the first in this miniseries, about calibration. Right? If you know ahead of time, that's great. That can feed in, but you still must calibrate. Okay, so that's a great one. Know your audience.
And then the second part of that, of course, is not just know your audience, but develop flexibility of behavior so that you can adapt to whoever you're speaking to or presenting to.
Love it, love it, love it. Okay, that's the know your audience rule. The next one, this is a cool one, and we talk a lot to this. It is to stop saying, "I'll try."
Ooh,
I'll try.
Makes me cringe.
I'm gonna tell a quick story here. So back when I was in my, I think it was early 20s, I lived with 3 of my buddies. So the 4 of us, we rented a house together, and one of the guys, Tim, great guy, and he just had this was back in the day when you rented videos from Blockbuster Video or whatever.
Yeah.
There was no online Netflix or anything like that. And so if we'd rented a movie or something, and Tim had rented it, and now it was his obligation to return the thing, we had this running joke that he would always have huge late fees because he had a Honda Prelude, a little nice old car. It was a cool car, and he had this car, and he always had maybe 2 Blockbuster videos sitting in the back seat that he would just keep forgetting to return. And we'd remind him, Tim, you should really return these so you don't have to pay so many late fees. Yeah, I know. I'll try to do it on my way home I'll try. And he would every single time not do it. And years later, of course, when I learned about this try, actually, I think I learned about the word try and how negative that is from you in 1993.
Okay.
When you presented at my university, you did a brain software seminar.
Right.
And I learned about this. And of course, I realized, oh, well, he's saying I'll try every single time. He's not going to do it. So when you say try, the problem is you are implying that you will fail.
Yeah. If at first you don't succeed, try again, and fail, and try, and fail, and try, and fail. It's built into the
So there's the
words.
do or do not. Don't try.
We were saying this in NLP long before Yoda was.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I also want to add in, we've mentioned this before, but it's worth repeating. Try is a fine word to use in the context of experimentation.
Like try it on for size.
Yeah, try on this shirt, see if you like it. Try this new restaurant. Try this new recipe. Try this new exercise. Try this new resort we want to go to on vacation. Life should be about interesting new experiences, which you can only do by trying things.
Then how do we differentiate between the two? How do we know when we're trying and failing and when we're trying something on for size?
I think it has to do with whether you are in control of it or not. You can't be in control of the quality of a restaurant. So you go and experience it, and it's pretty obvious, right? You know that you're not in control of whether or not this meal is actually any good. You're just going to order it and find out.
Right.
Or a movie that you want to rent, or whatever, a song that you want to listen to, a band that you want to see.
But there's no effort on your part.
Yeah, when it's well, I want to get in shape. I'm gonna try to go to the gym 3 times a week.
Yeah, how's that?
You're in control. Nobody is. And in fact, maybe this is a good time to shift over to the autonomy principle. I don't know if you want to add that in
why
or
not? Why not?
But when it comes down to, the reason I say now, Mike, is because you're in control of you, right? So when you say, oh, I'm going to try, that it makes it sound like something might get in your way and stop you when you're the ultimate authority on what you get to do with your life, what you get to do with your time. Now, if you say, I'm going to try to get there on time, and you're stuck in traffic and you legitimately are in the middle of a traffic jam, and someone calls you and says, hey, are you going to get to the airport in time to make your flight? And you say, well, I'm going to try. Yeah, there are limitations. We're not completely
that's saying I'll give it my best shot,
right?
Yeah.
There are external things going on like traffic that you cannot deal with. You cannot control how many cars are in your way. So I hope you all listen and get the point. We're talking about I'll try when you're legitimately in control.
The one who's in control.
I'll try to make it to the gym. I'll try to start
Remember I told you,
eating
martial
healthier.
arts school I went to years ago, they had a sign on the wall, one of the most disempowering things I've ever seen in my life. It said, it doesn't matter whether you succeed or not. All that matters is that you try.
Yes.
I said, oh, man.
And I don't know how many episodes ago, but we spliced in this Ontario government commercial about stop smoking.
Yeah.
It was a runner. I think the runner was out. It was a young lady doing a jog on the road, and the audio voice kept coming in. Try.
Oh, terrible.
And I was like, well, it often takes many times to quit smoking, and it's important that
let's
you
hardwire
just
in.
keep trying.
This is only my 5th time, so maybe when I've tried 15 times, then it's terrible.
Yeah. So when you're talking about the usuals, okay, I'm going to try to save part of my paycheck. I'm going to try to invest more money. I'm going to try to keep my house clean. I'm going to try to get to work on time. I'm going to try to get a new job that I actually like. I'm going to try to be nicer to my kids. No.
That's really important,
Those
Chris,
are
because
really
another
not.
aspect to this, and I interrupted you there, but
That's okay.
I did it really, really well, so it's all right.
We're doing a good job of not talking over each other too much.
Yeah, I really liked it when John Grinder said, I heard him say once, I've heard Mandel say this too, I read it in one of the books, that how our language limits us, and people do what they're talking about, and they talk about what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Our language will tend to match our behavior, and we can limit ourselves tremendously in the most horrible ways by limiting ourselves through our language. And that same martial arts school, when they were teaching edged weapon defenses, he was actually telling his students, you get into a fight and someone has a knife, go in with the attitude, I'm going to get cut, but I will survive.
Oh, yeah.
Now, to me, I just imagine going in, getting slashed all about the face and hands, and lying in a bleeding heap on the sidewalk until the EMS arrive and jab ringer solution or blood into me. It's ridiculous. When we go into a knife fight,
ridiculous.
in our system, we believe you're going to win. That's our attitude going in. I'm going to win.
Yes.
I don't say I'm going to get cut.
Yeah.
So watch out for the language limitations. You wanted to bring in the autonomy aspect now, though.
Yeah, actually, that's right. I wanted to bring in the autonomy aspect, but I'm checking the show notes live as we record here for the last episode because I don't want to repeat it if we already talked about it. And I could have sworn that we actually talked about this.
I don't think so, Dickie.
Maybe we didn't. Let's just have a quick scan.
Well,
no, it looks like we did not. Okay, so...
No, we didn't, buddy.
And I apologize if this ends up being repetitive. I don't think it is.
We can always edit it out.
So here's the autonomy principle, and it comes from... It's not originally from his book, I'm sure, but it's discussed and really well explained in the book Instant Influence by Michael Pantalon.
A book we highly recommend.
Pantalon. I got the book used on Amazon for like $20 hardcover. Awesome. Anyway, the theory being people already have enough motivation for everything that they want to do. You just have to unlock it, help them unlock it, or unlock it for themselves if they're using the technique on themselves. People will do what they want to do. So if you are telling people what to do, or what our friend Adam likes to say, shoulding all over someone.
Right.
You should go to the gym. You should really start eating healthier. You should learn how to reduce your own anxiety with NLP and hypnosis. Should. People will have their own reasons. And once they find their own reasons, they will be self-motivated.
They're not going to be motivated based on what we're telling them. Right.
What is the law again? The law of psychological. I almost said physiological. The law of psychological reactance. So there are some really excellent studies that I won't go into, but just to say that Pantalon in his book described several studies where people were put into these experimental situations they didn't know they were. They thought they were in some legit experiment or some legit situation like activity or whatever.
Right.
And the experimenters were injected into this situation to tell people what they should and should not do as some voluntary activities.
And what was the response to that? Yeah.
People did exactly the opposite of what they were told they should or shouldn't do. Mm-hmm. And even if somebody had picked an activity, I'm going to completely make this up. Let's say the next activity is you have to choose between throwing basketballs or painting on a canvas. And so on the break, let's say people had chosen they were going to throw basketballs, and somebody comes up and says, oh, you really shouldn't choose the basketball throwing thing. Well, that made people want to pick it even more, and vice versa. So people will do the opposite of what they are, or want to do the opposite of what they're told to do.
Or let's maybe not say the opposite, but let's say that the psychological reactance, what happens is we resist having someone else's arbitrary structure imposed upon us.
Imposed on us.
Should always imposes your own structure on someone else. But any attempt to control or change someone else, we automatically get irritated or at least resistant, maybe passive aggressive. We don't like being told what to do. We want to remain autonomous.
Bingo. So here's your tip for this part of the podcast. Whenever you are attempting to influence someone else, and attempting, I know that sounds a lot like try. Whenever you're out to influence someone, start with an autonomy reinforcing statement. This is completely up to you, but I wonder what it would be like if we might do this, or if we do that, whatever it is. I'd like this to happen. I recognize that this is completely up to you, but I would like X, and I would like X is another way to do it, right? You have any suggestions on top of that?
Well, just when you're saying that you would like it, you're now imposing structure again.
Well, yeah. You could say, I don't know about you. I would like this to happen, although I fully recognize that this is your choice. This is your decision. I can't make you do it, whatever it is. As long as you're reinforcing the autonomy and not saying you should, but, it's up to you, but you should do this. That doesn't work.
Yeah, that's not reinforcing it. It's a tricky thing.
It's okay to say what you want, as long as you're not saying, I expect you to do this, I need you to do this, I want,
I tell my students, Chris, that, when they're doing hypnosis, it's generally not a good idea. Sometimes you can do it. Okay, now I want you to just sit there, and I want you to, it's not about what you want. Just give them clear directions.
Right, when you were talking Ericksonian hypnosis, for example, so for the therapists and the hypnotists in the room listening to this, instead of, and I want you to just sit there with your eyes closed and relax, it's easy to sit there in that chair with your eyes closed.
It's a simple thing to go deeper now.
Yeah, that is no longer about what I want.
Right. That's right. So bottom line is preserve their autonomy. The more you can permit people to be free to choose, or at least seem to be free to choose, the less likely they will resist you, because we push back one way or another against control. We just do.
It is a great, great concept to reinforce autonomy. Okay, so now where are we?
We're talking about why. Why
right. Why
won't usually
keeps you
help you
stuck.
solve a problem. Why is an interesting word, because I've been anti-why for quite some time, but because of Pantalon's work, I've now found applications for it that are actually quite brilliant.
This is a great time for this discussion because it does so fit in nicely with what we learned from Pantalon's book.
Right.
And so talk about why and how it used to be and
then
still
we'll clarify that.
a word that we don't like, and then we'll clarify where we do like it.
Okay. When one is attempting to solve a problem, why is not your best choice of words? Because why? Why did this happen? Why do I feel sick all the time? Why am I depressed? What happens
Why can't I get myself to the gym?
Right. It will focus on the negative state. It will amplify it. It'll do nothing to improve your situation or move you forward to a better situation. You have to be in process, moving to your target state rather than being stuck in the problem state. And why questions will tend to keep you stuck. You can test this. Don't take my word for it. Find somebody at the workplace or someone you know who's always really irritable and
This
angry.
is your favorite example.
Yeah, and just go up to them and smile sweetly and helpfully and say, "Why are you always so irritable?" And just watch what happens. You'll access their irritability and they'll ramp and, "Well, are you kidding? I got this stupid job I got to do and I can't even see out the window. I'm stuck in this cubicle and I haven't had a vacation in 5 years." So they will give you everything that will support the problem state.
Yeah. Okay, so let me...
Pointing to the past, why isn't a good idea?
Let me say this. The word why, it's a three-letter word with a lot of power to create focus. And wherever somebody is focusing is going to drive kind of their energy towards that goal, or anti-goal in this case. So if you're focused on a problem, then you're going to drive yourself further and further into that problem. Does that make sense, Mike?
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Whereas if you're, and this is where we shift now to the useful cases where why helps, when you are focusing on a
future thing,
something else. So let's call it motivation.
Okay.
When you're focusing on reasons, motivations for something new, something better,
which is future,
why creates power.
So you can ask
leverage.
questions like, why might it be really good for you to be motivated?
Right.
That
I
kind
love
of
it.
thing.
Aiming
Yeah.
at the motivation.
Yeah.
You know, why is it possibly a good thing to whatever it is? I keep wanting to go back to the same old examples.
Let's crystallize this. Avoid why when you're looking into the past. Mm-hmm. Why things happen. That's a history lesson. It probably won't help you solve the problem. But you can use why when you're trying to find motivation or things that will be good in the situation. Why will it be a great idea for me to be physically fit? You know, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Let your brain generate the answers.
I'm thinking right on the spot here, why, in terms of a metaphor, originally I was thinking, well, it's like a telescope or a magnifying glass or a zoom lens or something like that. But then I thought, well, it's kind of almost like a steering wheel too. So why is a steering wheel that steers you towards whatever the heck you're asking about? So if you're asking about problems, why are you so depressed? It steers you to depression. You focus on it.
Of course. And then you'll amplify it right
and
away.
if you use it as a steering wheel towards motivation, why might it be a good idea to start working out regularly? Well, they'll give you their reasons. This comes back to the autonomy, right?
Right. Their reasons
by
will motivate
establishing
them.
autonomy first and then asking for their reasons, and you can do that with why questions, that helps the other person find their own existing motivation. They might not even be conscious of it yet.
Fantastic. That is fantastic. And again, you're not playing games with your own brain here. This will actually change things in your life if you begin to systematically apply these things. And it's quite remarkable. You know, Chris, we're at the 35-minute mark. We need to take a quick break and we'll come back onto the next item because my understanding is we have a special news report.
Correct, Mike. We have something truly startling to report that will prove to be of tremendous importance to hypnotic storm riders worldwide. Hey, Chris and Mike. Last night at around 9:30 p.m., I was driving near Caddo, Texas, and heading home to Dallas after visiting my brother. It was a clear night, and I saw what I thought at first was a bright shooting star coming down just north of me across the Texas-Oklahoma border. It was moving slowly and seemed to be under intelligent control. I thought it was a UFO, and I stopped my pickup truck and got out to see what was happening. Amazingly, it kept slowing down and was emitting what looked like retro rocket exhaust that was slowing its descent. I was terrified and fascinated at the same time and ran toward it, seemingly drawn by an unseen force. As I jogged toward it, I saw a dark cloud on the ground that was expanding in all directions away from the spacecraft. It was billions of ants rushing away from the rocket. It landed in the scrub not far away from a grain elevator, and even though it was scraped and burnt on the outside, and there was a huge cloud of dust around it, I could see a logo that said Shizjig Corporation on the cylindrical fuselage. As I continued to watch, there was a whirring sound, and then a hatch opened, and a red Tesla emerged. The driver drove it onto the road, right in front of my parked truck. Then he gave me a smile and a salute, and boom, I saw nothing but his taillights receding, heading east on Highway 180 towards Brad. There was a loud roaring sound, and the rocket went up in the air again, and it took off, but not as fast as that electric car. In the 20 seconds that I was able to see him, I recognized the driver. Without a doubt, it was Virgil Gus Grissom. I'd know that brush cut anywhere. Mr. Grassi went on to report that Grissom was very fit and in good spirits, but seemed a little tired around the eyes. I only wish he'd stuck around, said Noel Grassi. I would have loved to ask him about Mars and maybe got an autograph and a selfie. So there you have it, Mike.
Chris, this is the most astounding development since Jack Ruby shot Lee Harvey Oswald on national television. I hope the major news media have got the guts to cover this phenomenal story.
I have no idea what's going on, Mike, but it's great to know that Grissom is back and that little Tesla Roadster is still running fine after traveling billions of miles and spending some quality time in the high carbon dioxide Martian atmosphere. All right, let's go on. We have some more stuff to talk about before we end this podcast with an empowering question and a Meta 5.
Well, I want to talk about, I'm going to jump ahead on this list, Chris, to validate the other person.
Okay, let's do it. I think that's a good idea, Mike.
Shut up with the validation. One of the worst things that can happen is invalidation, and it can happen a lot of different ways. In fact, I recommend you Google this at some time.
I think that's not true at all.
Stop invalidating me. That's really interesting. Now, when you invalidate someone, in a way, it's belittling to them. It can be done a lot of different ways. Now, I know there's some hypersensitivity out there where if you look away or people think you rolled your eyes, oh, you invalidated me. That's ridiculous. But people deserve a listen. And we invalidate people when we interrupt them, when we tell them they're stupid, when we act as though what they're saying is of zero consequence. But we need to actively validate people as well. And this can be as simple as making supportive sounds when they're talking without interrupting them. So, I was there for 2 years and I got really depressed, and you're just, or you can say really depressed. Offer back their language. This will give validation to them and increase the rapport between them. You do not want to be invalidating other people because you will immediately build walls between you and them.
Mike, I completely agree with that. So I really just want to validate you for adding some tremendous value here. No, in all seriousness, have you ever, just think about this, have you ever had a conversation with somebody who kind of had poker face robot boy kind of look? They didn't give you any head nods or sounds or anything like that.
Oh, yeah.
You just have no information to calibrate whether this person is interested. I actually had a boss like this in my last job before I left the corporate world altogether. And, it was a good boss in a lot of ways, but he had this weird habit that if you were talking to him, he would just stare at you deadpanned. And then when you stopped talking, he would say nothing. Maybe 10 seconds would go by.
Oh, that's horrible.
And you're going, what's this guy thinking? You have no way to calibrate, really.
Well, what you're giving us here, Chris,
very
is brilliant.
weird.
Is you've given us another freaking intervention.
Yeah, the
blank
deadpan
face,
stare.
the deadpan stare invalidation
it
technique.
It certainly doesn't make someone else feel that they are in rapport with you,
or even
if
that
you're
they're
doing
significant. The problem with invalidation is it makes people feel insignificant.
Yeah.
And, you know, some people, some passive aggressives, well, covert aggressives are really good at this. I know of one woman who would align everyone in the workplace against another woman. And the way she did it, found out from other sources, was the woman who was victimized by this couldn't figure out why everybody treated her badly. And then it came to light from someone else that this person who was causing the problems would exaggerate what woman A said and add these weird mannerisms to it. So let's say she came into work late and there was a couple of people missing and she said, "Oh, where is everybody?" said this woman. The problem person would then spin it to everyone and say, "Oh, Joanne drives me crazy. She comes in with her eyes and go, 'Where is everybody? Where is everybody? She's so stupid.'" And that completely invalidates her to the other people. That's not how she said it.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm getting at here?
I was thinking about exactly when you said that. I was thinking about the typical sarcastic response somebody might make too when, let's say, I don't know. Let's say I read a book like Instant Influence by Michael Pantalon, and I go to somebody and I say, "Hey, I just read this great book. It's fantastic. I've learned some really great ways to motivate myself and other people." And let's say the response was, "Oh, sure. Yeah, I bet you did."
That's just deflating.
Yeah, it's pop the bubble, right? That is very invalidating, and it makes you feel like, everything that I just thought was significant about what I got away from that book or training is just nothing.
You know, I used to get invalidated by accident as a kid, and I'm not making this up. When I'd learn like a new magic trick or something as a kid, because I was really into magic, I'd be great at it until I went to show it to my parents. And people always say, "Well, you must have been nervous." No, I wasn't nervous. It's just if there was a chance of something going wrong,
it did.
It always did in front of my parents. So I dropped the ace of hearts or something. I feel like a freaking lunatic.
This makes me think it's a perfect time to also remind people about if you want to invalidate someone, simply be not present, or what's the absent?
Yeah.
So let's say, here's a good example, because I've caught myself doing this at times, right? Let's say my head is in work and I've got my iPhone and I'm staring down at the screen, and my daughter comes home from school and I look up briefly and say, "Oh, hi, sweetheart." And then I go back to what I was doing and she's all excited to tell me about something, but my head's in work. How do you think she feels?
Well, which daughter, Frelica or Trojana?
Probably not too validated. I just ignore you now. When you
I was just zoning out, looking
Point
at my
being,
screen, and you didn't notice.
If you are a present person in a relationship, in a conversation, that will do wonders to help validate the other person. If you are absent, if you are staring at your phone, if you seem to be head in the clouds thinking about someone else and someone's trying to talk to you about trying and failing to talk to you about something important, it's very invalidating. It's,
well, you invalidated me when I said Frelica and Trojana off the top of my head. Those names were so brilliant.
But I admit it, so it's okay.
But we should go to the empowering question.
All right, so we are going to do the empowering question. We're going to come back in part 3 of the mini-series on communication. We have so much more to cover. So please do remember to send in your questions and comments.
Because if you don't, we'll feel invalidated.
Yeah, exactly. But seriously, all you have to do is grab your iPhone or your Android, open up the voice recorder app, and record something for 30 or 60 seconds. Don't make it a Ken Sweatman story. And then email us the file, info@MikeMandelHypnosis.com, and you will get your voice on this podcast. Okay.
Before you give us the question, I developed a new intervention this morning. Serious?
Oh, okay, do it.
You'll know what it is right away. I'll just give you the title. The Intentional Ken Sweatman Story.
I'm not going to turn this into a Ken Sweatman story.
My back is killing me, man, as you know.
Yeah. All right, here's your empowering question, folks, for episode 118, did I say, right? It's 118?
It is.
All right, 118. Ask yourself, who in my life is my greatest communication challenge? And what influence do I have that can and will make things much better? So which communication skill can and will I apply to improve things with that one person?
Nice one, buddy. Nice one. I'm going to be applying that myself. For our Meta 5 today, we're bringing a new series periodically. It's called Stories from the Road. And the other day, the 29th of January, marked 1975 was my very first show, January 29th, 1975. So what's that, 45 years or
That's
something
a long
ridiculous.
time ago. I can't
And
even do the
a
math.
lot of stories in those thousands and thousands of shows around the world. And today I want to talk about the flame projectors. And Chris has heard me mention this before.
I love this story.
We had a big stage show. My manager and I, we had this thing built. It was a massive stage. It was the first time fiber optics were used for entertainment. 8-foot by 8-foot fiber optic panel, hand wired, making this looking through galaxies view. We would take people on the bridge of a starship on a trip in outer space through hypnosis. So I do my first part of the show would be mentalism and get people into trance. Then we put them behind the curtains, set them up on the set, still in trance. There'd be an intermission of 15 minutes. The curtains would open, and they'd all take this trip into outer space. Well, the soundtrack was designed digitally. We had an amazing, amazing sound system. Part of it was the stage was built in Las Vegas for us. And the company who did the pyrotechnics were called Lunatech. They were out of Huntsville, Alabama. They were NASA employees who did a bunch of really cool stuff with fire. And we had fireworks that would go off in the air indoors over the audience. Explosions as these alien spacecraft are being hit by lasers or whatever. But we also had 2 flame projectors made out of 1/4-inch steel. These are about 1.5 to 2 feet high. Heavy, heavy metal base on them. So they weighed about 10 to 15 pounds each. They were filled with smokeless gunpowder, smokeless shotgun powder. To a certain level, and they were triggered with squibs remotely. So when we would take off, the road crew, the pyrotechnician, would turn the key, hit the button, and both these flame projectors would fire 7-foot-long flames out the sides like the stage was taking off. You could feel the heat from 100 feet away. You'd never get away with that now. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
Well, for that show, the manager had forgotten to buy smokeless shotgun powder, and he sent a kid to the hardware store, and he came back with black powder, which is used to make bullets. They didn't know any better, and they filled the flame projectors, and when we set them off, one of them actually exploded. It blew the lid off this 1/4-inch steel pod. It hit the ceiling of the gym, maybe 10 or 12 pounds weight, and fell into the audience. It's a miracle nobody was hurt. It could have showered everybody with shrapnel if it had blown apart.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to the Brain Software Podcast. This has been episode 118, which was Communication Tips, Part 2 in our mini-series. We'll be coming back for more, and in the meantime, check out our website, MikeMandelHypnosis.com. You can get the Brain Software book for free, and check out our live events at MikeMandelHypnosis.com/events. Perhaps you'll come to Toronto, meet up with us in Las Vegas, or in
the UK
in November of 2019. And thanks, everybody.
Thanks again, and good night!
Mr. Thompson, I ever tell you a most remarkable story of Henry Squatter learning to speak a foreign language.
I haven't heard this one. Please do tell me.
Wonderful story. It was in June of 1917. The war had been going on for quite a while. The chaps had a lot of trench foot, and there was white phosphorus coming down night after night. They were very concerned. And some reinforcements were sent in, and we were thrilled because they sent in 200 men from the Gurkha Rifles. I don't know if you know the Gurkhas. They're wonderful people from Nepal. Average height is about 5'4", barrel-chested. They're natural fighters. Britain has used them as mercenaries for well over 100 years. And they're the most natural fighters in the world. They carry a horrible curved knife called a kukri, and a Gurkha can take a man's head off with one sweep of this. Well, we're all rather eager to meet them, and the Gurkhas were rather keen to get over and attack the Germans. And a Gurkha will never draw his kukri without it drawing blood. Did you know that?
No.
They draw it, and they'll cut their finger. If you want to see it, they'll look at the kukri, and then they'll put it away again. And so they're all polishing their kukris and cutting their fingers, and just sitting there polishing their kukris. And Bryce Morgan and a couple of the other chaps had been sitting in the dining hall. Well, not much of a dining hall, really. Just a few bits of brown paper stapled together and painted with vinegar. And they wanted to meet the Gurkhas. So Squatter and Bryce Morgan and Guy Billingham, I think, and Johnny Brookman Ding Tilasia, they all wandered around down the trench trying to stay out of the water. Their feet were all cold. And the Gurkhas were all sitting there just polishing their kukris together. It was the most wonderful sight. And, of course, there were splashes of blood. And in the corner there was a chap, he had a little fire. And over the fire he had a forge he'd built.
And it wasn't much of a fire, really, just some crumpled up red paper dipped in vinegar, so it wasn't very hot. But he had this fire-going makeshift thing, and he was trying to get this iron to melt. And we were looking at him, and Bryce Morgan saw him, and he yelled, "Bavarch!" And the chap sharpened right up and yelled, "Bavarch!" back to him. And Squatter said, "Bryce Morgan, what the deuce is that all about?" He said, "Oh, he's speaking Brilly." He said he's one of the 400 men in the world who from the Spangler merchants of iron from the Harappan River Valley. He said, "I speak Brilly, as you remember." He said, "Oh, yes, I forgot that." He said, "What was it you said to him?" He said, "Well, I said Bavarch." He said, "It's a greeting, although depending on your tonality, it can mean over 200 different things." Squatter said, "Well, would you teach me? And some of this I'd love to learn." He said, "Well, yes, look at him and say Bavarch." And the man looked up again, and Squatter looked at him, and he said, "Bavarch." And the man leapt to his feet, and he spit at Squatter, and struck him over the head with an iron horseshoe. And then, of course, the Gurkhas jumped in and started hacking him to bits, and we put him in the infirmary. It took months before he regained consciousness. And when he did, the Brilly man, speaking fellow Spangler merchant, came in to apologize. And the way you apologize in Brilly is you say Bavarch. And he said to Squatter, "Bavarch." And Squatter, forgetting what had happened, said Bavarch back to him. He didn't know he'd told him to bugger off. The man came and started beating him senseless again. At least he was already in the infirmary. Well, it was more a cardboard box painted with vinegar. Oh, man, that was right.